Wuthering Waves is changing. It's slowly growing, becoming the game that it was supposed to be at release. If you recall, back at the beginning of 2.0, a lot of people were complaining that the game essentially became Genshinified, and by Genshinified, which is apparently a term, by the way, what they meant was that it had become too bright, too saturated, too vibrant, and that it had lost part of its identity. They were trying to focus too much on being a happy game rather than focusing on what players wanted from it back when it was announced, revealed, back when they were anticipating its release. And that was a dark, gritty, messed up story. And then look at it now, after having played through 2.0 with Carlotta, Zani, Peebs, after playing through 2.1 through 6, seeing Cardathia, Fleur-de-Lis, more recently Augusta and Yuno, seeing the tragic stories that are being told, seeing the absolute horrors unfold, seeing Frolova's story and how she was essentially murdered. Like, spoiler, by the way, for those of you that are gonna watch any further, I will be discussing the entirety of 2.6 part 1 and part 2, and then just giving my basic thoughts on why I think the game is changing and where I think it's going. Because let me tell you, if y'all thought 1.0 was the direction the game was going to go in, if y'all thought that 2.0, the beginning of 2.0, was where the game was going to go, holy shit, were we wrong. So I made a tweet going over my general thoughts. It has so far garnered over 41,000 views, 1,500 likes, tons of comments. I stated that I could not believe that I was saying it, that Kudo was somehow continuing to make the new patches even more thrilling and engaging than older patches. I say that 2.6 had been absolutely incredible, and it had. Seeing Cardathia's story, the climax with Fleur-de-Lis, seeing how Cardathia and her personality just continued to evolve was something I did not expect out of the game. Seeing 2.0 overhaul the entire narrative style, the voice acting, and the character presentation blew my mind. I thought that this was the change the game needed to succeed, but that was only the beginning, because future characters that have continued to be released since the OG 2.x characters have been so much more fleshed out, so much more riveting, elaborative. It has been an absolute pleasure to not only continue to do sponsored videos for WuWa, to be a part of their active community, but to also see the game grow, see new characters continue to break records, with Cardathia actually being their highest grossing patch and banner character since launch, seeing how good, fleshed out, detailed these characters are with their stories, the voice actors bringing them to life, and then also seeing them continue to release 2 entire chapters repeatedly in the case of Lupa, and then more recently the case of Augusta and Yuno. And this is completely disregarding how they continue to animation creep their game. Not power creep, not locking or gating mechanics and features behind individual resonators. No, these are characters that you look at, that you play as, and you're like, holy fuck, this is insane. I don't know how they're continuing to make even better characters as the game goes along, but they are, and it blows my mind. So part 1, this dealt with Augusta. It gave us a glimpse into the kind of person that Yuno was, because she was a focal point of part 1, but not the focal point of part 1. Part 1 showcased Augusta's tragic history. It showcased her relationship with Angel. It was very dark, very messed up. It had an insane climax at the end where you went head-to-head with Augusta in a 1v1. Then you joined together with Augusta and Yuno and fought the evil, the bad guy, when then Yuno sacrificed herself to make sure that we all achieved victory. A lot of people actually missed this because there were memes going around saying, who Yuno? And who's the blue-haired girl in the banner? Like, things like that. And then there were repeatedly people saying, you didn't pay much attention to the story, did you? When in reality, they didn't pay much attention to the story, because if they had, they would have realized Yuno actually drained herself, and in so doing, disappeared from people's memories, erased herself from existence, which was crazy, because after what they did with Frolova, how they killed off Frolova, so she's not even right now a character that exists in this universe, like, that was big. That was a little concerning, a little scary, because if they continue to mess with characters like that, like, people are going to start to suffer from PTSD. It was very dark, it was very messed up, and I think it had moments that did in her story feel like it dragged on a little bit, but at the same time, I think that mainly affected people with some attention issues. But in my personal opinion, I think that it was kind of necessary for the story and the background of Augusta, the background of Angel, because it elaborated a ton. And it really, really fleshed out characters that needed it. Because without being well fleshed out, sufficiently fleshed out, you don't really care about the characters, do you? Before we go any further, I do want to take a moment here to thank all of my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are absolutely phenomenal, and I genuinely cannot thank you all enough for the support. Then part 2 hit. Part 2 presented the story in an entirely different way. There was no real climactic scene between Rover and ex-character like Augusta or Cardathea or Lupa, where we overcame some monolithic evil creature. Instead, this was more personal. It was more enclosed. It dealt with Yuno, her tragic history. And let me tell you, oh my God, seeing everything unfold, seeing how she dealt with everything, man, that was absolutely depressing. She has been fighting against fate alone all these years, and has now, once again, as I noted in my tweet, she has ended up alone. She was restored, yeah, but at the same time, nobody remembers who she is, with the single exception being Rover, which means that every single relationship that she had built, every single experience that she had been a part of, not only no longer exists, but needs to be rebuilt from their very foundational core. This, I'm sure some of you can actually relate to how alone she feels, but this is isolating, this is terrifying, and absolutely depressing. And Kudo did masterful work elaborating and highlighting all of this throughout her entire story. I also want to point out real quick, the NPCs in this patch, they actually stole the show. Some of the characters that wanted their future read, their fortune told, her dad, the blacksmith, he was probably the best character in the entire patch, and he was a fucking side character, bro. God damn. This though, was this a happy ending for her? I mean, yeah, sure. You know, she ended up restored. She ended up alive. But I think, ultimately, it was bittersweet. It was far from happy. She is alive, and she can now finally, I think, craft her own future. I think a lot of this patch was, instead of being through the perspective of Rover, was instead through discussions, was through visuals, and I think was told in a way that kept me captivated throughout the entire thing. Kind of like a story, like a novel, rather than a movie, if you understand what I mean. Typically, the game tends to have you play as Rover, explore areas, regions, fight lots of monsters. There were so few actual, real, genuine encounters, battles in this patch. I think maybe out of a 3-hour patch, it encompassed like 2 minutes. 3 minutes, that was it. And that is because at the end of the day, this was a story being told. This was the story of Yuno being told and her tragic history. This was unrelated to anything, or this was a style of narrative that was unrelated to any style we have seen up until this point. It was beautiful. They should give a masterclass. Kudo specifically should give a masterclass in storytelling, because this is how you tell a story in a gacha game. You don't tell a story with a background of a single color with text insinuating something is happening. No, you show this shit on screen in all its HD visual glory. Now, seeing the two of them, Augusta from part 1, Yuno from part 2, come full circle was sad. Very sad, but also satisfying. And seeing where the game is going to go in 2.7 and 2.8 with Chewy1, with Chisa, with Galbrena, who I'm actually kind of surprised was not, like, in this patch really at all, by the way. Like, what was that about? Why wasn't she there? I believe this is going to leave people genuinely speechless. Saying that 2.6 shattered my expectations would be underselling what happened. 2.6 has proven that Kudo is very talented at telling a multifaceted story with compelling characters and choices. Now all they need to do is find a way to consolidate the cast in a meaningful way in 2.8 to conclude Renaceda's story and set up the new Federation in the 3.x series. I think a great way of doing this is to essentially replicate what they did at the end of 1.0, which was have that whole Avengers Assemble thing, but you know, without Yuanwu just standing there awkwardly while the rest of the cast stared at him, not really knowing who he was. It's like, hey, guys, how y'all doing? They're like, the fuck are you? Having all the characters we met in 2.0 through 2.8 come together to fight whatever is threatening them in the final patch, in the final showdown for Renacida. And I'm sure y'all have speculation on who or what that's gonna be, would be the pinnacle of fucking cinema, dude. This right here, this was a 10 out of 10 in terms of a patch and update. A minor update, not a major like 2.0, 3.0, or 4.0, just a side patch, a 2.x or 3.x patch. It was unbelievable. 2.6 has been absolutely incredible, and I genuinely cannot wait to see how 2.7 and 2.8 somehow top it, because I didn't think we could top previous patches, but here we are again. God damn. This game has improved so much. This game is going places that no other gacha game right now is going. And it is my personal privilege to be here, a part of this journey myself. And by the way, I also want to point out I did win my 50-50 for Yuno. I got her on pole 65, but then I also happened to get her weapon on pole 65 as well. That's like one of the only 50-50s I've ever won in Wuwa history. I think I've only ever won one other 50-50 since release. Fuck yeah! I know you think that you just hit the end of the video, and technically, yeah, you have. And I know your first reaction is to close out of it at this juncture, but don't. No, instead, I urge you to take a moment here and click one of the videos on screen that are coming up in just a moment, so you remain up to date with everything going on in the gacha genre. Trust me, you are not going to regret doing so. Stay flaccid.